Hi, this is Carl Polachuk, and this is another SOP video for managed service providers. Today we're talking about the changing technology that you use with backups. We all remember old technology, right? We all go back and say, oh, I remember the 5 1/4 inch disc and the 3 1/2 inch disc, and how we were amazed when we can get an entire megabyte on one disc. Well, here's my favorite old 1 megabyte disc, and I've put it right next to an 8 gigabyte SD card. I didn't use a micro SD because it would be too hard to focus on them. But you know, the micro SD is even smaller. And so, today we have such cool technology. And one of the things you have to think about is, how does the form factor for my backup affect my decisions about that backup? There are several things to consider. The first is capacity. What capacity do you need? Even today, most clients don't have terabytes of data. Some do, but when people are using Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, even if there's 70 people in the office, there's just a limited number of documents that they need, and most of them are way under 1 megabyte in size. A second consideration is speed. When you think about speed, I always try to get a full backup every night. So basically, depending on when you start, let's say that you need to finish between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. That way you've got lots of time for people to work a little late, get to work a little early, but you'll be done with the backup. So if you're moving it off to the cloud, well, you've got to figure out what the width of your pipe is and how much data changes in a given day. If you're moving it from disk to disk, or disk to disk to tape, or disk to cloud, you want to make sure that you've got everything done in such a way that you don't interrupt the client's ability to actually get their job done. A third consideration you should worry about is the media lifetime. There was a time when we stored things on Floptical, which is a floppy optical device, or a CD, or even tape, right? Well, obviously, those all have different lifetimes. If you try to get something off of an old tape, your chances of restoring it are extremely good, because the lifetime of tape has, as a rule, exceeded the amount of time that we've been using them. We're getting to the edge of that barrier, but that means that we would be looking to restore something 50, 60 years old. Related to that is the durability of your medium. So if you think about something like a hard drive, how many times can you drop a hard drive before it doesn't work anymore? You can drop a CD a lot. You can drop a tape as much as you want. But a hard drive, there's just a limit to how far that's going to go. A fifth item is, what is the form factor lifetime? And this is becoming less relevant with the cloud, but it is not irrelevant. So if you think about a form factor, remember we used to have the old DDS1 tapes, and then DDS2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, right? So each generation could read so far back, but couldn't write very far back, maybe one generation in some cases, and maybe no generations in the newer ones. So how long will we be able to use this media? If somebody comes to you now and they've got a 5 1/2 inch or 5 1/4 inch disc, you're not going to be able to restore from it in most cases, unless you just happen to have a bunch of old crap sitting around. So think about that, and again, it becomes less relevant with the cloud. Next, let's talk about cost. So it's cool to say, oh, we have this fancy new technology and all that, but when people are looking at backing stuff up, one of the things you want to think about is, am I going to take a copy of this off-site forever? Now, if you do that, and it's in the form of, let's say, a hard drive that costs, in today's dollars, $150, okay, that's cool. How often are you going to make that expense? And if you swap out disks on a regular basis, how often are you going to do that? And how many disks do you need to have in circulation, right? So forth and so on. All of those things matter, because you have to make sure that the cost is acceptable. It is one of the reasons why companies like Google still use tape backup, is because it is the most reliable and most cost-effective in large scale. For very small businesses, it is much more likely we're going to back stuff up to the cloud, and it kind of becomes somebody else's problem about the longevity of that. I say kinda because if there's ever a problem and you need to get your data back and you can't, it becomes your problem once again. I'm a huge fan of always having something where I can say, absolute worst case scenario, I can go back to this point in time, and maybe that is January 1st of this year, which sounded great in February, doesn't sound so great in November, right? So how many points of backup can I go back to, and what is the cost of doing so? And finally, there's ease of use. You must master whatever backup technology you're using. You must absolutely master it so that you know you can get your client's data back. One of the reasons why we do monthly tests of all backups, we do an actual restore of some data, is to verify that the backup is working, but also to make sure that all the technicians are trained on the restore procedures. If you do not master the backup technology, you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to get your client's data back. And if you don't have extremely standard backup systems, then if somebody else comes in, they may not be able to restore the client's data. And obviously, that's the most important thing that we need to plan for, is restoring the client's data in case of a disaster. The last thing I would tell you is you need to have some kind of a written plan about who has custody of the backups. You know, it's so common in small business that what happens is we give the backup medium to the person at the front desk, and she takes it home every night, but she doesn't really, because she puts it into her briefcase or her purse, and then she forgets to take it out at home. She brings it back the next day, puts the next one in, and pretty soon you've got a system where really all of your data is on site, including the backups, and you really don't have an off-site at all. It's also the case that some people are very careful about this sort of thing, and they give it to the same person again and again and again, which is cool until that person leaves the company. Also, if you are keeping your clients' backups, whether it's tapes, discs, or whatever, you need to make sure that that is documented and that you have the correct liability insurance. If you don't know what I'm talking about, talk to the folks at ASCII. They will help you get insured appropriately and make sure that you have the riders that you need for your liability insurance. Overall, anything related to backups is extremely important. So you've got to make sure that you think about it, you plan for it, and you do it right. Do not let this slide, because at the end of the day, it really is the most important thing that you need to do for your clients. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Carl Polachek wishing you all the best in your managed service business.